Hello and welcome back to In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we've got episode 91. A lot of stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about all the fights we had this weekend with Carlos Ulberg's first round knockout over Dominick Reyes, James DeGale's really bad BKFC debut, the MVP card, a whole lot of stuff. We're going to talk about who Moses Itauma could be fighting next. But we're going to start off with another piece of breaking news in this Dana White Zuffa boxing storyline that we're following, and that is that they have officially locked down Paramount as the broadcaster for Zuffa boxing starting in January 2026. Obviously, UFC just signed a $7.7 billion deal with Paramount, where it'll be the home of Paramount for the next 7 years. Sorry, Paramount will be the home of the UFC for the next 7 years, all their events. It's a lot of money. Now, at first, I thought maybe this Zuffa boxing, the rights to Zuffa boxing are included in that rights package that Paramount paid for, because 7.7 billion is a lot of money over 7 years, and it's way more than ESPN paid for the UFC rights. So I thought there's definitely enough room in there for them to have also included Zuffa boxing, but it sounds like this is its own deal that they worked out between Paramount and TKO and UFC and Nick Khan, whoever. And this will be 12 events a year. They're going to gradually increase that amount, but next year we're going to be getting 12 Zuffa boxing cards. Apparently it's set for over 5 years, is what I've heard. I'm not sure how confirmed that is. But as for more specifics, Dana keeps on saying they're signing around 400 to 450 boxers. There's no way. There's no way they'll be able to get all those guys out over 12 events in 1 year. I mean, he's just lying. Maybe they'll have 40 to 45, I think is far more accurate and reasonable. Maybe the goal is to eventually have that money. Because, you look at the UFC, they've got more than that. I think the UFC only has like around 600 to 700 fighters themselves across their whole roster. So starting out with 450 it just doesn't make sense across 12 events. When UFC is, you have 40, 45 events a year. So we'll see how many they actually start off with. But they're going to be only recognizing the Ring Magazine rankings. This comes as no surprise. Dana White wants to bring the UFC model into boxing. He doesn't want to deal with the WBC, the WBA, all those other sanctioning bodies. He doesn't like that system, and this is mainly the whole thing that's been so controversial is stuff like this, where they're trying to monopolize it. The Ali Act, he says today they're not making any changes to the Ali Act, but they're going to add on to it. And I don't know what that means. He said it in a way that it's like you'll have the option as a boxer to either fight under the Ali Act, and essentially it sounds like go fight for another promotion where they follow the sanctioning body rules, or you can come work for me. You can come fight under my promotion, and you're going to fight for the Zuffa boxing title, whatever that ends up being. So it sounds like that's his plan, is to have his own separate league, and boxers can still go and do all the other stuff, but then they can also come into Zuffa boxing. It doesn't actually clear up the discussion of who's the one champion, because you're actually just adding on another champion into this mix. Where we already have four, now there's a fifth champion involved. So it doesn't really clear it up. I know the goal is to eventually have everyone want to come over and fight for Zuffa boxing and have that be the legitimate title, where the WBC, WBA will end up being like the PFL title in a sense. But I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know how he means, we're going to add on to the Ali Act. We're not taking anything out of it. That doesn't make any sense. I'm guessing that he will be allowed to have his own promotional belt. If you look at stuff like Misfits, which obviously is mainly a British promotion and is not all completely professional boxing, they do have some events in the USA where they're allowed to have a Misfits championship on the line. So it does kind of bring up the question of, well, they're allowed to have a promotional belt. I know it's a much different thing it would end up being, but still, it's the same concept. A promotional belt title being fought for in boxing, professional boxing, because a lot of those Misfits, when Misfits has an event in the United States, it is sanctioned as professional fight. So I'm just saying. So there must be some loopholes. Another thing he talked about, potentially changing the ring design and the rule set. That I really don't like. I don't think the boxing has any changes it needs to the ring design. Certainly not like in the shape of it. Like, I don't understand what that means. If he's trying to make it an octagon, like what does he mean? Maybe he means like stylistically, like they're gonna do some, they're gonna start doing the ring. I don't even know what this means. I'm really really confused. So we'll see. Maybe the only thing I can think of is maybe he's turning the ropes into like a cage. Kind of like how UFC does it, which I would personally not be a fan of. I like the ropes. I think that makes more sense, and I think it's too iconic and too, but historic to change that. As for the rule set, I don't know what rules he wants changed. I don't think there's any need for any rules to be changed unless he wants something where it's like better judges. Like I have no idea what this rule change could be, and a lot of me thinks he's just kind of talking nonsense and trying to make it seem like he's making a lot more, coming in with much bigger swing than he really is. So we're gonna see. I cannot wait for January to see what the first Zuffa boxing card looks like, the production, the setup, the rules, whatever it's gonna be, because this really could change the future trajectory of boxing forever. I really do think that this is definitely the biggest straight up entrance of a promotional entity we may have ever seen. Maybe Hold Turkey Al Sheikh, but that's a little bit different. He's also one of the more different ones we've ever seen. But even when he came in, he's working with all the promoters to just put together super events. He's not putting together a consistent calendar. A consistent calendar. Obviously he's a part of this thing with Dana, but I don't know, man. I'm really curious. And, also it being on the same platform as UFC is huge, and getting to be potentially on CBS linear television is massive. That is a really, really good rights deal, and I'm super happy that they're going to get that exposure. I am kind of curious if this means that boxing will become like the Friday night sport with Zuffa boxing and then UFC on Saturdays. I'd be totally fine with that because I'm anticipating that Paramount and UFC are not going to want the two events to clash. So that's what I think will happen. But who knows? I'm really excited. And then the last thing we'll talk about Zuffa boxing. I did just see Dan Raphael report that Top Rank has apparently come to an agreement to release Vito Mielnicki Jr. as he is now going to sign with Zuffa Boxing. And this is the start of two things. One, it's the start of fighters leaving Top Rank. They have no TV deal. They've been homeless for 2 months, and they still haven't gotten anything signed. And once they get it signed, it'll take months to get the first event in place. I don't think we see a Top Rank card until 2026 at this pace. We're seeing them put all their fighters into other cards. It's been a big thing that we've been following. Now, fighters leaving Top Rank, he's the first one. And Top Rank is going to have to allow them to leave because, you can't just hold their careers hostage. Him going to Zuffa boxing is really interesting to me. Very interesting to me. I don't blame him. And I think we're going to see a lot of these boxers like him, like Brandon Adams, who are these, who we've also heard is joining Zuffa boxing. There's somebody like Michael Hunter, maybe even, who have had some promotional issues, who have, not been able to break into the mainstream. Even though they're good, they've never been able to get a big fight, really, even though they're really good. And they think Dana White is the kind of guy. He can fix this. They're all Americans. These are the exact kind of fighters that I anticipate going to Zuffa boxing, and I think they could do pretty well. I could totally see somebody like Mielnicki or Adams headlining the first event. They could even fight each other, the one division apart. So I'm totally fine with that. I'm really excited. I hope that Zuffa boxing just releases their roster at some point, and we see who's actually signed up. Because who knows, we could see some really heavy hitters, and I think that they need at least one like world champion. But then again, they don't want a world champion because they're not going to recognize it. So, I don't know. One world contender, maybe that. But let's talk about the events we had this weekend. Let's kick it off with UFC Perth. Wasn't the best card overall, but you did have some good moments. Obviously, Carlos Ulberg knocking out Dominick Reyes in one round was tremendous. I thought that he was in complete control of the fight from the get-go. It was a slow and measured start, but he had some – every time he hit Reyes, he was like, oh, this isn't going to go well. And then just gets a fantastic knockout at the end of the first round, ends all that kind of joke, kind of not Dominick Reyes title run talk. And Ulberg is now, I think he's like a 9-fight win streak, I want to say, the longest in the division. Listen, after this Saturday, which is a huge day for the 205-pound division, you're going to find out who wins between not only Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev in their rematch, but also who wins between Khalil Roundtree and Yuri Prohaska. And the winner of that Yuri versus Khalil fight will get the next title shot. We know that. And after that guy, whoever the winners of those two fights are going to meet, Carlos Ulberg has got next. I'm curious if he'll take another fight in the meantime. Maybe he fights the loser of the main event even to further, prove his right for a title shot. But I think that he's absolutely number 5 really right now. Maybe even number 4, you can argue. But I think it is Yuri and Khalil and then Ulberg gets the next title shot after that. And yeah, I thought it was a really impressive performance, and I think that he deserves the title shot when it's his turn. But I think that he's high up in that Russian roulette, I guess you will, of cycling through the next guy. Co-main event, you had Jimmy Crute get a first-round submission over Ivan Arslan. That was a pretty nasty submission, just brute forcing it. It was crazy. He's on, I think, a 2-3 fight win streak now, so good for him. Neil Magny had a really interesting fight. Comeback win, third-round submission after losing the first 2 rounds to Jake Matthews. That first round, he actually got really lucky because he was almost going to get very unlucky. Jake Matthews had him in a tight chokehold, and then about 2 seconds before the bell rings, the ref thinks that Neil Magny's out because he kind of puts his arm down and he gets Matthews off of him. And then Magny's like, no, I'm good. I'm not unconscious. Like, I'm totally fine. And then as he's getting off of him, the bell rings. And so the ref just says, okay, I didn't end the fight. I ended the round. And it's a little bit questionable because he did intervene early, and that should be a stoppage. However, he did get the opportunity to say, well, the round just ended. Magny's fine. Let's just continue. And that really sucks for Jake Matthews because, he thought he won the fight. And in a way, he kind of did deserve to win the fight just because the ref did intervene before the round was over. But and then he ends up going on to lose the fight in a big upset. So, yeah, that was crazy. Tom Nolan had a first-round submission after a very tough round. He was getting kind of beat up, I thought, and then he came back and got that. A lot of good comebacks. Overall, pretty good card, I'd say. Cam Rouston had a pretty good first-round stoppage, as did Brando Perisic. I thought that he looked really awesome. He had a brutal first-round knockout over Alicia Ellison. Not a bad card, but I don't know. There wasn't a lot to be expected, and I don't feel like it over-delivered at all. But it wasn't bad. And I'm very excited for the next card. Obviously, we talked about that with Pereira, Ankalaev 2, UFC 320 October 4th. It's going to be a banger. And Marab, Corey Sandhagen. Yeah, we're eating good on that one. BKFC, I thought, overall, had a really good event in Manchester. BKFC 81. I think that they had 12 fights, and 11 of them had stoppages. 10 of them had stoppages. So, really, really good card. The main event was just terrible. Obviously, it was headlined by James DeGale, making his return to combat sports, former world champion of boxing, former Olympic gold medalist, and after, I think, 6 years out of the ring, he makes his debut in the bare knuckle fighting championship against Matt Floyd, and it is an absolute stinker. I thought that DeGale looked like he hadn't fought in years and should have stayed retired. And I think if Matt Floyd looked like he's never fought ever. And had this dumb look on his face the whole time. He got like 5 points deducted because he was just fighting so dirty, headbutting and holding and doing all this stuff, and was just like not taking his eyes off of DeGale. And I'm like, dude, stop being an idiot and thinking you're cool. Like, you suck. You really suck. And he's just throwing these one shots. And granted, James DeGale looked terrible too. They both looked bad, but James DeGale did win the fight, mainly just because he wasn't getting points deducted. And I actually thought that Matt Floyd won a couple of the rounds just because he was just coming in and throwing one big shot and then clinching, and it kind of was working. So I don't know. It was just horrible to watch. It felt like it's only 10-minute fight, and it felt like it was an hour. It was just really, really poor. And I definitely don't want to see Matt Floyd come back ever. As for James DeGale, I don't want to see him fight again either. If he does, okay, hopefully he just has a better opponent. That'll make it less of a stinker, but I didn't see anything in there that thought, yeah, let's get this guy fighting again. No. Aaron Chalmers had a great knockout performance over Jack Fincham, stopping him after 2 rounds, just beating him up. Really, really good performance from him. Johnny Graham had a second-round knockout over Naveed Mansouri. That was great. Louis Garside, KO of the year over John Chip Chase, and I think that was an upset as well. That was really, really crazy. I mean, he just turned his lights out. Very scary knockout. And then really everyone else on this card looked phenomenal. I mean, I wish I could say all of them, but they all had really, really good performances, I thought. Sean Weir, he had a great comeback. I would just go and just look up the highlights. And BKFC is ridiculous. I watched this card late because I was busy when it was on, and I was able to watch all 12 fights in under 2 hours. That's crazy. how quick it goes. I mean, it's a wild sport. It's a wild, wild sport. Let's talk about some boxing, though. Most valuable prospects 15. Kim Clavel putting on a show against Sol Kudos, taking her IBF 105-pound title in Montreal, taking it back to Canada. She is now a two-division world champion, I think, and is calling for unification with Yokasta Valle. Sign me up. I thought Kudos versus Clavel was a fantastic fight. It was a banger. Really, really fun fight. Clavel won 97-93 on my scorecard. Actually, no, excuse me, 98-92. It was a really, really good fight. Largely one-sided, but I thought Kudos was much more in it than the scorecards suggest. At least on mine, it was one-sided in that Clavel was winning most of the rounds, but she was having a fight for it, and Kudos was there. She was just getting outclassed. And, yeah, really, really good fight. Tam Tabolt, monster first-round knockout over Christina Mazzotta. She did not know where she was. I really do think that Tabolt is the future of women's boxing. She is just a monster. She's big. She's strong. She's fast. She's well-spoken. I mean, she's a master's degree. She's fantastic, and I think that world title honors in 2026 is a given at this point. Thought there's a little bit of a step down in competition for her, most certainly, but I think that I'd love to see her in a world title fight as soon as her next fight, to be honest. She is fantastic. I was impressed with Mazloum Akdeniz, who got a fourth-round stoppage over Anthony Soto in a battle of undefeated in his hometown in Canada. Really, really good fight there. Nelvi Tiafok making his MVP debut with a stoppage after the fourth round. He's obviously a German Olympic heavyweight prospect. Every promotion needs a heavyweight prospect to get behind, and this is MVPs. So big things coming for him. Juana Walton had a good performance over 6 rounds, his first 6 rounds. And, they need to push him well because he has such a big fan base as an actor. He can be really, really big for them. And he can be a huge star in boxing, even if he's not that good. I don't watch him and think, yeah, this guy's going to be a world champion. But I do watch him and say, this kid already is a superstar. And I don't know what he's doing on the prelims. Amanda Gaye, she really impressed me. Again, another step down in competition. I want to see her fight for a world title next. She can fight Shernika Johnson if Dina Thorsland's still out. Gaye is the IBO bantamweight world champion, so why not add that belt into the mix with their undisputed champ? Why not? She looked really good. I believe she earns it. Naomi Valle lost her fight in an upset against Federica Macri. I thought that was a close fight. I think it could have gone Valle's way, or a draw, or even Macri. I don't think Valle was doing particularly well. She didn't look good, but I also feel like she was getting the better shots. She may not have been going as crazy, but I think that she was doing the cleaner work than Macri for a lot of the fight. So a little bit of an odd decision in that one. But yeah, another great MVP show. And yeah, I really like what they're building with prospects. And looking forward to the next one on October 18th. We also had another GBM sports show in Sheffield, England. Sean McComb dominating Ben Crocker. Had a rough first-round knockdown and then recovered from that pretty quickly and then won every round of the fight after that, at least on my card he did. I thought that he boxed really well and just showed a different level to Ben Crocker, who suffered his first defeat. I still think he's a pretty good fighter and can get in with some good guys. He could rematch Tiernan Bradley next. They had a good fight in April, but yeah, Sean McComb looked really good. I would love to see him fight someone like Adam Azim next, and I think that that's very possible. He's got a world ranking. He's tough. He's hard to beat. Arnold Barboza beat him, and most people think that he didn't win that fight. So I think that Adam Azim, someone at that level, is going to be thirsting at the mouth for a Sean McComb fight because he is someone that he's not invincible, and you can find a way to beat him, but will go be a good name on your record. And I'm particularly mentioning Adam Azim because him and Boxer have a good way of going after guys that when the fight gets announced, everyone's like, oh, that's a good one. Like, oh, Zarab Dalaev is going to really test him. But we all know Azim is going to beat him. Really we do. Same with Sergey Lipinets, O'Hara Davies, where they can sell it really well and say, look at this step up. Look at it. Look at this record-breaking, whatever. And then we know how it goes. But, hey, I'd be down for that. You had Tycee Gallagher coming over, tough first 2 rounds against Ellie Hellowell and dominating her for the rest of that fight. She looked really good. I mean, again, another British super bantamweight. Get her in there with Ellie Scotney at some point. Not yet. She's still at British level, but I think that she's undefeated. She's looked nothing but good, really. I would be open to seeing it at some point down the line. Greatest Krause getting a dominant decision victory over Scott Forrest. Had a huge knockdown in the first round, and then won pretty much every round after that. I thought that he could have gotten a stoppage. I don't know what his corner was wanting to do there. That is Forrest or the referee. He was just getting beaten up badly for the last 2 or 3 rounds and wasn't having any success. I don't know what they were waiting for, but they should have stopped the fight, in my opinion. And yeah, I thought Krause was really impressive to come up and wait against somebody that much bigger than you and dominate them when they are still a pretty solid prospect in their own right. So we'll see what they do next with him. I think that he's going to headline one of their next shows. GBM is going to Holland in November, and Greatest Krause obviously is from the Netherlands, so he'll certainly be on that card, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the main event, although he's probably going to be in a 6 or 8 rounder. You also had Shaquille Thompson, who himself fought in I think it was an 8-rounder against Grant Dennis. Didn't matter because he stopped him in the second round, as he should have. Good to see that he's still blowing out these journeymen, but what are they doing with him? Shaquille Thompson nearly had a fight with Janabek Alam Connolly, and now he's treading water fighting journeymen. Grant Dennis is 19 and 17 now. It's so stupid why he's in these fights. I don't know if they can't get him opponents or they're just trying to keep him active because they're waiting on something, but I don't understand why we're wasting his prime fighting completely pointless fights. Literally nothing but just stay busy when you can just stay busy fighting actual competition. They had some other prospects, Taz Nadeem, Ed Hardy, get good performances. Taz Nadeem came over I think he had a bit of a cut and got a 5th-round stoppage, and he's now going to be in their tournament they're doing on November the 8th in Hull for the 8-man super middleweight tournament, which is really interesting to me. Now we know what kind of level that's at. He's obviously a prospect, only had a few fights, but I'm assuming that they're probably going to throw him in there pretty tough with some other guys. So looking forward to that. Reese Mold as well had another journeyman fight. Again, he's not on the same level as Shaquille Thompson at all, but he is a guy who typically fights 10-rounders and should be in those actual competitive fights instead of fighting these. I don't know what the whole thing is with British fighters fighting, pointless fights, because it's not just GBM. It's a lot of promotions do this. Callum Smith, in between world title fights a random guy from Mexico who has a losing record. It's just stupid. ProBucks TV had an interesting card. Almost no stoppages except for the main event where Najee Lopez took out Calvin Henderson in the 5th round. Good stoppage in my opinion. Henderson wasn't really doing much and had no defense and was getting beat up. So I'm okay with it. Najee Lopez is a really, really good prospect turning into a contender at 175 pounds. I'd love to see him tested even more. He's had 3 stoppage wins this year, I think. So keep him coming, man. Some upsets before that. Raul Garcia upsetting Emiliano Moreno. It was actually a really close fight, I thought. It ended up being on the scorecards, but and that's mainly because Moreno had a strong last few rounds. But I do think Garcia deserved the win. And I mean, I don't know how Moreno didn't realize. He looks like he was shocked when the scorecards read out. I mean, you should have known. But the end of that 10th round is honestly in round of the year contention. Both guys for the last minute have nothing left. They're both dead tired and are just throwing these haymakers, so much so that Moreno even slips and falls, like smacks down on the canvas and dislocates his shoulder, and Garcia is protesting that he should have gotten a knockdown or even a stoppage called. But that was clearly a slip. He just threw too hard, but that shows you how hard these guys were swinging, and it was tremendous. It was a great fight. Great fight in a tremendous 10th round. So really loved that one. Christian Cruz Chacon upset Jeremy Hill. Again, another classic case of you're just not doing enough. Jeremy Hill looked fantastic against Malik Montgomery up here earlier this year when he upset him. And Saturday night, there just wasn't that guy in the ring, and he was slow. He wasn't throwing enough. He was not being able. He couldn't get his range figured out. And Chacon just brought that Mexican war to him and kind of dominated, honestly. I think it was hard to find Hill more than 3 rounds in that fight, really. So, well done to Chacon. Joshua Kevin Anton, he had a pretty good win. Made his guy quit after the 7th round. He reminded me of Sebastian Fundora, Hamza Shiraz, those really tall guys who are strong and they don't fight like they've got this huge reach advantage. They fight on the inside and they make it a war and they make it a scrap, and I really appreciate that. I'm a big fan of both Fundora and Shiraz, and I'm excited for Anton's next fight. And the last thing we'll talk about from that card, Anthony Cuba looked tremendous in a really good 50-50 fight against Jorge De Jesus. He dominated him. Honestly, I think he won every round of the fight, and I thought that he looked really good. So really good, well matching of the pro box card. Oh, and also you had Juanmita Lopez de Jesus get a 6-round decision win. 2 knockdowns included in that expedition, I guess you could say, onto Pro Box TV, not on Top Rank. He was in a little special feature fight after the main event, had a big crowd there. It was a weird fight, weird opponent. He got a cut, but stayed active, got a good 6 rounds in. And yeah, he's another prospect I've got my eyes on. And yeah, it was a good show. And then lastly, you had PFL MENA 3. I'm not even really going to talk about this card much. You had 4 semifinalists decided, and I think only 3 finishes across the 10 fights. It was a really rough card to get through. Everyone was just wrestling, and they weren't even exciting. The one fight that was really exciting was the main event. Mohamed Alakra finishes Ayman Galal in 1 round, gets himself a TKO by, I didn't even know if this was legal, but he just kicks down on Galal's, knee or his thigh, and, just shuts him down, and it was fantastic stoppage. It really, it was going to be a viral moment, and yeah, I was impressed by that, and I thought that he looked really solid. So yeah, I just wish we could have gotten more of that on that card. Or actually, I correct myself. I think there's 4 finishes out of the 10 fights, but most of the fights were just boring grappling matches on the ground, which is weird because the last PFL MENA card, I think July, was really, really fun and a lot of finishes I remember. But this was not that. But yeah, shout out to Alakra for giving us a crazy fight. And I am looking forward to the finals, hopefully, because all the guys who did win their fights were very dominant. And I like when we get to see 2 dominant fighters fight each other. So those finals should be good. But let's get back into the news and talk about some other stuff. Let's talk about something that is boxing related, but is not necessarily about boxing itself. Terrence Crawford, he had his Omaha homecoming parade on Saturday. Big moment for him, for the city, really. Got the key to the city, I think, too. And then that night gets pulled over at gunpoint after the parade. And I don't know. This is just really, it just really sucks to see. And it's mainly because it's dude, this sucks. On his special day, when he gets to come home, he was not arrested. No charges were pressed against him. I believe he was arrested for reckless driving. Not arrested. Pulled over for reckless driving pretty late at night. And they saw a gun in the car. So I can understand why the cop was, okay, we got to pull this guy over, and now there's a gun there. However, I think there's a better way to handle it than pointing the gun at him. And we just have to be completely blunt here. This is a white police officer pointing a gun at an innocent black man who was just in his car. And this is America, and we unfortunately have a racism problem, and we have a police brutality problem. And especially when you do get to see this kind of stuff exposed with somebody who has a platform like Terrence Crawford, it shows that the system needs some changes and that some guys need to be held accountable. And again, they're going to look into it, and it's not like the cop did anything too bad, thank God. But yeah, definitely a bad situation, and it just sucks for Crawford to, be celebrated as this city's hero and to still not be given the benefit of the doubt. So, yeah. On the other side of that Canelo Crawford equation, we heard today on the Inside the Ring that Canelo Alvarez is going to undergo elbow surgery after his loss to Terrence Crawford, and so this now means that he's going to be out of the ring until mid to late 2026. Obviously, Turki Al-Sheikh wanted him to return in February on a Saudi Arabia card. Now the plan is for him to come back in second, third quarter. So that does kind of blow, but I'm not too surprised, and I'm honestly not too mad, mainly because you look at Crawford, who won the fight. We're not going to see him out back for at least another year, because that's just what he does. I don't want to say he's a part-time fighter, but he kind of is, because he does only fight a year and has only fought once a year for the past 6 or 7 years. But yeah, I did want to see Canelo back out pretty soon just to get another win under him and to fight someone like Hamza Shiraz. But, that February card now does have a vacancy. I'm sure Shiraz could still get a good fight on it. There's still plenty of good fights out there for him at 168. But apparently, Turkey is considering doing another David Benavidez, Devin Haney doubleheader if they both win their fights. I don't see any reason to jump ahead and start planning another card with them when they've both got really good fights, particularly Devin Haney. I think that we're all pretty much behind Benavidez to beat
Yard. And while I am actually very much behind Haney to beat Norman, most people that's not the case. In fact, I think Norman may even be the favorite in that fight to a lot of people. I think that I'm quite confident that Haney beats him, but they both have really, really tough fights ahead of them. And also, I don't want to see these guys only be fighting in Saudi Arabia. Devin Haney and David Benavidez are 2 of the 10, maybe even top 5 most popular fighters in American boxing today. Why are we sending them to the middle of the day in Saudi Arabia, across the world? No, put them in prime time in Las Vegas, New York City, Los Angeles, wherever you got to put it. These guys are stars, and they shouldn't be fighting in random fights somewhere else. I mean, they're not random fights, but random fight cards, As much as I love the super cards, certain fights deserve to be in America or the UK or wherever they need to be. It's the fights where it's like, is this really going to sell tickets? Somewhere it's like Baturbia versus Bivol. Obviously, that trilogy is being talked about for Russia, which I think will do really well. But the first 2 fights, no problem with them being in Saudi Arabia, because those aren't these. It's a big fight for boxing fans, but you're not going to put that in Las Vegas, and it's probably not going to sell out an arena. So why not? But even stuff like Moses Itauma versus Dillian White, that should have been in the UK. Even if it's not a super fight, it should have been in the UK. Anyway, speaking of Moses Itauma, we know his next fight is going to be December 13th in Manchester, and we know that Derek Chisora is slated to appear on the same card. Frank Warren has clarified that they're not fighting each other. They're both going to be in separate fights, so who are they fighting? We also heard today Moses Itauma has officially rejected the IBF Eliminator shot against Frank Sanchez. Obviously, the winner of that would be mandatory for Alexander Usyk. Lots of guys have now avoided that IBF Eliminator. I'm sure they're down to like number 7 versus number 8 in the rankings at this point, but I don't blame him. I don't think there's any need for Itauma to rush to a fight with Usyk, even if that's what Turkey wants. I don't think that there's any need to do that. I say you honestly may wait until Usyk retires and then all the belts become vacant. Then you win the belt, and then you start going division or sanction by sanction and collecting all of them if you can. But yeah, there's no reason to rush. And we're hearing that the potential options for this December 13th date, David Adelaide and Michael Hunter are 2 options that have been put forward. Not surprised by either of these. I think that they're not bad opponents, but I don't know if they're necessarily steps up from Dillian White. Maybe there's Dillian White that we saw on August 16th, but David Adelaide is British level. We just saw in his last fight against Hrgovic. There's no need to push him up to world level when he's not that. I think that he probably gets stopped by Itauma, but I won't be mad if that's the fight. As for Michael Hunter, I think he's a little bit more deserving to be at world level. We also have barely seen him fight in the last few years, and I don't know how much he really has left, so I think Itauma probably stops him as well. Now, the other options that we've heard were explored, but it seems like they're no longer, are the fights that actually seem more interesting. Philip Hrgovic, who apparently probably was not going to be able to make the fight with that cut he did sustain in the Adelaide fight, but that's the fight we all really wanted to see. Zhilei Zhang and Jarrell Miller were also discussed, and I would have loved both those options. Particularly Jarrell Miller. I think that makes a lot of sense, and he needs a fight. He really does, because he's had like 3 fights fall out on him in the past 6 months. So, yeah, I don't know. It seems like it'll probably be Adelaide or Hunter, which is okay. I'm just worried Queensberry is going to put this card on pay-per-view as well, because they're going to have Derek Chisora on that as well. There are rumors of Derek Chisora potentially fighting Daniel Dubois. I don't think that we need to see that, but if it happens, it happens. And when I say I don't think we need to see that, I think that Daniel Dubois is still a top 10 heavyweight, and I think that he probably turns Derek Chisora's lights out, and I don't want to see that in Chisora's last fight. I want to see him fight someone who's good, but somebody who he can still beat. So that's my 2 cents on it. I also do want to mention that Eimantas Stanionis got a win this weekend as well in his homecoming fight in Lithuania. Very wide unanimous decision against Jabulani Makens, and now that he's got that out of the way, let's throw him right back into the mix at 147. There's a lot of B-listers running those titles right now, and I think that Stanionis beats almost everybody in the division, so let's just get him back into good fights. Obviously, he came up very short against Jerome Ennis, but most people would. But I think that him fighting someone like Lewis Crocker, I think he beats Lewis Crocker. Vanderlei Silva had a fight this weekend against Acelino Freitas, where he outweighed him by like 40 pounds. And I think that Silva got disqualified, and then a whole riot started breaking out. And this was maybe the craziest post-fight brawl I've ever seen, where everyone is in the ring throwing punches. And I think it's actually the ring announcer who throws an elbow and knocks Vanderlei Silva out cold After the fight has already ended, Silva, he shows his face now like a day or two later, and he's completely bruised up and beaten and battered. And it's like, what happened? It was actually the crazy thing ever. This is like a black tie event. The same organizers who did the really bad Anderson Silva Chael Sonnen exhibition last year. Just crazy stuff to see this happen. And I hope everyone's okay, particularly Vanderlei Silva, because he literally got knocked out, but that was just a wild occurrence to see. And yeah, these exhibitions turn real crazy. I mean, we all remember Floyd Mayweather versus John Gotti, and how that one ended in a similar fashion. Dalton Smith says that the Subriel Matias fight is being planned for January 10th in New York City. I know another fight that's being planned for January 10th in New York City, and that is Shakur Stevenson versus Teofimo Lopez. I thought this fight was going to be in Puerto Rico, as Fresh Productions won the purse bid for it, but I also thought that maybe it does end up just going on a Saudi card, because we've seen a lot of purse bids being won by opposing sides, and then, the main promotion ends up putting it on anyways. So, seems like this could be the case. I think that makes perfect sense as an undercard fight for a big re-out-season card. So it'd be Shakur versus Teo, Dalton Smith versus Matias, and I've also heard that Janibek versus Adames is still possible. Janibek tweeted today again saying a fight announcement's coming soon. Hopefully they're getting that over the line, as well as Callum Smith versus David Morrell could potentially be on this card. So, and again, Barclays Center is the main venue being discussed. So it looks like this could be really similar to their card in July, in that just being a really great 4-fight card. But yeah, this is a really good fight in my opinion, and I would love to see that on the same card. Actually be the same division as Shakur versus Teofimo, so it sets up a unification there. So we'll see if it ends up coming about on that day, but I do think this fight is going to happen, and I'm excited to see such a big card so early in the year. So yeah. Not a big card. UFC Vegas 111 main event has been announced for November 8th, and that is Gabriel Bonfim versus Randy Brown. I think it's like Bonfim is like number 14 welterweight versus unranked Randy Brown. Again, it kind of similar with the week before. Not a bad fight, but a main event? What are we doing here? What are we doing? I mean, all these pay-per-views right now are really stacked, and I'm like, can we not just take one fight from the early prelims on UFC 322 and make that the main event? Because the main events we have in the Apex right now are just trash. And I mean, I get it. Maybe this is coming from everyone complaining over the women getting the main events in the Apex because people don't like women's MMA. I would gladly take a top 7 or 8 women's flyweight matchup over an unranked guy in the main event on an Apex card and a fight where there's no big stars, honestly. Because this has no stakes, it has no star power, and I simply don't care that much. And you have 2 UFC events back-to-back that are like that. So really just waters down the product. And I hope that we don't have stuff like this on the Paramount deal, but I'm kind of worried this is just what is going to happen, is that we're going to have these kind of duds. And I get it. The UFC has been on a tremendous stretch where we're getting all arena fights in all these different countries for 6-7 weeks in a row with no Apex cards, and it's been great. But what happens is that you have all these D-listers waiting to get fights, and then they end up fighting in the main event. So yeah, that's where we're at. Shushu Carrington says that Top Rank called George Warren to talk about the Nick Ball fight, and he said that they will never make the fight with Carrington because they're saving Ball for Inoue. Now, I don't know how much of that phrasing is correct, but I do believe that Top Rank or Queensberry really want Nick Ball to fight Inoue whenever he moves it to 126, which is continually getting pushed back. I don't think he moves up to featherweight until late next year, but they want Nick Ball to be that first guy, and I think that is the plan with His Excellency as well, is to have Nick Ball as the first opponent for Inoue once he hits 126 pounds. And as for Ball waiting until then, I don't like that because we've already seen Ball taking some questionable title defenses like Ronnie Rios and TJ Doheny. Sam Goodman was a good one, I thought, but we'll see. If he's ducking Mirko Cuello as well, that's going to be a bit of an issue. Turki Al-Sheikh and Eddie Hearn posted today that they met with a big surprise. Some people were saying, is this Turkey investing in Matchroom? Because obviously that was something talked about in their Netflix documentary. And they talked about, Eddie Hearn said, it's crazy how in Riyadh you can have in a 2-hour meeting, discuss huge changes to 3 sports in a massive change to the boxing world. So that kind of makes me question if he is investing, because Matchroom is involved with more than one sport. They're involved with this as well as I think pool and darts. And maybe they have more stuff, but Matchroom is not the only, boxing is not the only sport that Matchroom is involved in. So wouldn't be surprised if he's investing there. As for the big change in boxing, maybe they're just getting another big fight over the line. Who knows? But yeah, really, really interesting stuff. And we see them working together a lot. You don't see Eddie flying over to Riyadh just for a couple days to just have meetings. Usually, he's usually there for other reasons as well, for an event, or Turkey's meeting him somewhere else. So who knows what they've got cooking? But it's always something good. And then lastly, BKFC 84 has been announced for November 15th in Palm Desert, California. Going to be another big card by the sounds of it, and I'm excited for it. My only question is, you're putting this on November 15th, the same day as UFC 322 with Islam versus JDM. Don't love that competition. I mean, they've got another event, I think, every other weekend in November, and you don't want to go on Friday night either, because that's when you have Jake versus Tank Davis. So, I don't know. I mean, hey, if it's a good fight, it adds on to an already mega weekend with those two events as well as Eubank Bend 2. But I don't know. No need to stack everything onto the same couple of days in the sport, I feel. So that's everything I've got for today. There is another card this week on Wednesday in Nigeria, headlined by Brandon Glanton, coming off his loss to Chris Smith, where I thought he gave a great account of himself, and he's going to be fighting Marcus Brown. He was meant to be fighting, of course, Rocky Fielding. In his return to the ring, Rocky Fielding got injured or decided he didn't want to fight anymore, so he's now fighting Marcus Brown, who has only ever lost to Artur Beterbiev and John Pascal. So good competition there, but I think that I am behind Glanton in this one as a cruiserweight. A lot of guys on this undercard, a big card. Most notably, the 6 out is Dan Aziz, who's coming back after his loss to Lewis Edmondson, who I thought that he won against. I really did. I thought that was a bad call. And he did have another 6-round fight in April that he won, and now he's got another 6-rounder. So I don't know. Not a whole lot else of interest on the undercard, but you know what? Maybe there's some good fights to go down. I think the co-main event is Emmanuel Odias versus Idris Afeni, which is an 8-round heavyweight affair. So I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to see what this Nigerian stadium looks like. We know that Ghana is a potential for Eddie Hearn, or not Eddie Hearn, it's just Eddie Hearn who talks about it, for Anthony Joshua to fight next. And Nigeria has apparently also put in an offer. I would rather him fighting Nigeria, as he's Nigerian. So who knows? This could be a little bit of an appetite of what the Nigerian crowd looks like. It's on DAZN, and that'll be on Wednesday. Next episode, 92, is probably going to drop on Thursday, where we'll preview UFC 320, PFL's Usman Nurmagomedov versus Paul Hughes 2, Nathaniel Collins coming back against Cristobal Lorente, and of course, BKFC 82, Mike Perry, Jeremy Stevens. But that's all I've got for today. Thank y'all so much for listening. Huge weekend in combat sports coming up next week. But thank y'all so much for listening, and peace out.